Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts, Tom Vassell and Sam Healy.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia. Hello.
Sam Healy. Welcome back, folks.
Now, I was excited when I got this in the mail, or when Sam got in the mail. Someone got in the mail.
We got it.
When it came in the mail.
It came in the mail. Manhattan Project 2 Minutes to Midnight, because the first Manhattan Project is one I think that we all enjoy. In fact, I think it's in your top 100.
Yeah.
You like it too, right?
I do. Not as much as both of you guys, but I do enjoy
It's
it.
a great worker placement game.
And then they came out with a sequel, Manhattan Project Energy Empire, which was kind of a different game, really.
It's more of a spin-off, I would say.
Right. But we also like that one. In fact, you like that one more.
I like that one considerably more than the first, yes.
And they also had the card game that
Which is horrible.
It's not that bad. It's not that good either, but it's all right.
Did you like the card game?
Oh, no, it's quite bad.
Okay. Well, anyway, this one though is basically they're spinning off the first one. Mm-hmm. Okay, it has nothing to do with Energy Empire. This is very similar to the first one. In Manhattan Project, you were building bombs, and that was pretty much the end of it. In this one, the bombs are pretty much built, and you are now threatening everyone else with them.
Yep.
Which is kind of a wholesome theme, I suppose. All right, here's how it plays.
So here I have set up for you a representation of the Manhattan Project Minutes to Midnight. This is a very dense game with a lot of different things that you can do in it. But how you actually carry out your turn is very simple. So I'm going to explain that first, and then I'm going to probably spend the bulk of our explanation time here just trying to give you a good smattering of all of the different things that you can do in the game, and all the different ways that you can score points, and so forth and so on. And hopefully we won't take up too much of your time, but I think that's probably the best way to go about explaining Minutes to Midnight, and just give the basic turn structure first, and then as you're doing those turns, all of the different things that you can do. Of course, we won't show you everything, just some high points so that you can kind of get the idea. Well, as you've probably already heard, this is a worker placement game. So in your worker placement, you're going to be taking your workers here and placing them out on different parts of the board so that when you pull them back or retrieve them, they will give you some type of benefit that will help you towards a certain goal, score more points, hurting your opponent, a lot of different things that are going on here. On top of that, there are also going to be these different scoring phases throughout the course of the game that will score you additional points if you are besting your opponents in those specific areas. Okay, on your turn, you're either going to do one of two different things. You're either going to place workers up to 1 or 2, or if all of your workers are out and you can't place any workers, you're going to retrieve your workers. And when you retrieve your workers, you're going to be getting all of these different benefits that the buildings and these different sites up here on the worker assignment board are going to be giving you. So that's generally what you do on your turn. You're simply placing out workers. If you can't do that, you are retrieving workers on your turn. Now, on a worker placement turn, you can construct a building, which is one of these buildings out here. You simply pay the cost, take whichever one you want, and put it into your mainland here. All right. The second thing that you can do is you can make 1 or 2 worker placements, which means that you can put guys into your buildings that are in your mainland, or you can put workers out here on any of these spots, following, of course, the restrictions that are there. Well, what restrictions might there be? Well, if there's a question mark here, that means any kind of worker can go into that spot. So on this top row here, the recruiting and education, any kind of worker can go in there. You have regular workers, then you also have generals, politicians, and spies. And if there is a kind of icon here that is not a question mark, then that is a specific kind of worker that has to go there. For example, in taxation, you have to put politicians here and here. Spies have to go here in the counter-espionage. And then United Nations is politicians as well. The military actions that are down here these are military actions, proliferation. These all take generals. except for these spots here. You can pay 2 coins and any worker instead of a general to get 1 military action. And that's the same thing here. Down here, you have to pay a general and a money. General and 2 money. General and 3 coins. All right, and that's the same thing up here. It's any person plus the amount of coins that is listed there. So what are these different things doing? Well, first of all, in education, you put something here and it's going to turn into a politician. Here, and a coin. Here, it just turns into a politician. Here, it turns into a general. Here, you have to place a person and pay a gold to get a general, and so forth and so on. So this is like a training site, I guess you could say. The recruiting site is where you're going to adjust your worker track. So right now, at the beginning of the game, everybody is able to start off with 3 workers. Now that's the first player. Other players will be able to get more workers depending upon what spot in the lineup you're going to fall. But if you go here, for example, if you put a guy here and pay 2 gold, you'll be able to raise your worker track by 2, which allows you to have 2 more workers in there. I already explained the education as well. Taxation is you can put any person here, and then you can get 3, but everybody else gets 1. Here you put 1 politician, and you only get 2. And here you can put 2 politicians, and you only get 3. At the United Nations, you can put 3 politicians here, and you can move 1 disc forward or backward in 2 different third world nations. So this is where you can kind of vie for control for all of these different third world countries that are out there with the United Nations. Here in counter espionage, you can use your spies here, and it says remove a spy from one of your buildings and activate it yourself. So if you have somebody, which is one thing that a spy can do, a spy can come and infiltrate one of the buildings that you have on your mainland, and if somebody does that, you can send your spy here to counter espionage to basically kick them out, and then you're able to activate that building. So the first spot only takes 1 spy, but the second spot takes a spy and a gold. And then construction here, you simply construct 1 building for free. You put a dude here plus a gold, and you can construct any one of those buildings for free. Down here in proliferation, it takes a general, and it says you can place a nuke from your supply onto each of your ICBM silos. So these are your ICBM silos. We'll get to what they do in just a few moments, but you can take your nuclear tokens and place them onto nuclear silos. Here, military action is simply allows you to do a military action. For example, if it has 1 chevron, that means it's going to award you 1 military action. If it has 2 chevrons or 3, it's 2 or 3 actions respectively. And then you also have the production use over here, where you can place a general and get 2 nuclear tokens. You can place anybody and a gold and get 2, or you can put 1 person here and simply use 1 factory. So let's get to talking about what the buildings do. Okay, so first things first, if you have a factory in your mainland over here and you use one of your workers to activate it, then it is going to allow you to do one of 3 different things. You can build a sub in your color, of course, but you can also build a bomber, either one of the neutral ones or one of your color, whichever you'd like, or you can take $1 from the general supply and add it to your stash. So that's what a factory does. The research lab gives you a choice. You can either take 2 coins from the general supply, or you can advance your token here on any of the technology tracks 1 space. So if I wanted to activate my research lab, I could say, I don't know, I want to move my bomber up 1. And that will allow for a number of different things, how many different bombers you can have out, how many different subs you can have out, how many different ICBMs and all this other kind of stuff. This is a restriction to how much of these other things that you can have out on the board. The reactor is pretty simple. When you activate your own reactor with a laborer, it produces a number of nukes equal to your reactor tech level. So if you activate your reactor and you had it up here at 3, that means you would be able to take 3 tokens from the supply. The ICBM silo, which is this one right here, when you activate one of your silos with a laborer, you can exchange any number of nukes between your personal supply and that silo, with the caveat being that you can never have more nuclear tokens than your current ICBM level. All right, so let's say you had 3 tokens in your supply, but your tech level was only at 2. You'd only be able to put 2 tokens onto that silo. The ABM launchers actually cannot be activated. They are simply a defense mechanism that is used in a lot of these different scoring things over here. So while you can't activate your ABM launchers with a worker, they are very useful to scoring points over here during these different scoring phases. And then finally, the test site is that a building where when you activate it with a laborer, you can detonate between 1 and 7 nukes from your personal supply. You choose how many nukes you detonate, and you'll get 1 victory point for each detonated nuke that you use in that test site. Now, other actions that you can do, for example, down here, these military actions. These things are things like you can deploy aircraft, you can deploy submarines, you can sweep for submarines, which basically means that you're going to be able to take and shuffle the cards that other players have put here and remove 2 of them at random, which means that you might get rid of some subs, you might get rid of decoys, you never know. Then another thing that you can do is with a military action, is that you can move nukes overseas. So you can basically move up to 5 nukes between your personal supply into any third world countries that you control. So that in a nutshell is what a lot of the different things that you can do in this game. I know that there's a lot here, but generally speaking, on your turn, it is not difficult to play because you're simply putting out workers or retrieving workers. You can also construct buildings while during your place workers phase, but it is not that difficult as far as how you play the game. The complexity comes in all of the different paths to victory that you can take in trying to score the most points by the end of the round. I should also mention that there are special country cards that gives each player a special ability. For example, this is the USA. There's also South Africa, Germany, China, Israel, North Korea, France, Brazil, Pakistan, Britain, and the Soviet Union. So there are a lot of different things that you can do here that help you along a very thematic inclusion. One thing that I also, I guess, need to mention is that on your retrieval turn, you're going to be moving this round marker 1. And so when people retrieve their workers from the board, that's when this round marker is going to be advancing. And when it reaches to these different spots, that's when those different scorings will occur. And then, of course, end scoring will happen over there as well. Bombers. If bombers score, you're going to get 7 victory points if you don't have any enemy bombers in your airspace. Your airspace is right here on the board. So that's one thing that will get you points, is by making sure that people aren't putting bombers or shooting them down or what have you. You also will get 1 victory point for each nuke on your deployed bombers, level 1 and 2 in your own airspace, and level 3 and 4 in any airspace. So if you have a bunch of these guys in your airspace and you have nuclear tokens on them, then they're going to be scoring you points at the end of the during this scoring phase. And then if you have these guys in any other space, then they're going to be scoring you 1 point each as well. After this scores, though, we're going to return all bombers and fighters squadrons to their owners' supplies, so that they have to be redeployed on a future military action later on. The third world scoring phase here is going to be where you're going to score 3 points if you are among the players with the most detonated test sites. There's that. Of course, you'll get to understand that a little bit later when we talk about the actual test sites. You'll get 4 victory points when this scores if your ABM defense matches or exceeds the number of nukes in your third world country. Nukes can go here, and this is the third world country that is on your board. So if your number of ABM launchers equals or exceeds the number of nuclear tokens that are in your third world country, then you'll score 4 points. You'll also score 1 point for each nuke in a nation that you control. This track here is the control track. So whoever is furthest along that track is the one who controls the world. So you'll get 1 point for every nuke in a nation that you control, and you'll also get 3 victory points for each nation that you control. So again, there's a lot of points to be scored here on these different things. ICBMs here, you're going to, let's put this back on the 30. ICBMs, if you get 4 points if your ABM defense matches or exceeds the ICBMs of your opponents who have the most ICBMs, nukes on silos. You're also going to get 1 victory point for each of your ICBMs. You're also going to get 7 victory points if you are among the players with the most ICBMs. And then finally, you're going to get 4 points if you are among the players with the second most ICBMs. So again, a lot of points being scored here. And then finally, subs. You're going to, first of all, reveal all cards in coastal waters. All revealed decoys are returned to the general supply. Then you're going to get 7 points if your ABM defense matches or exceeds how many opponents' nukes are in your coastal waters. Then you're also going to get 1 point for each nuke on your deployed submarines. The score subs, and then you return them to their owner's supply. So again, this is where much of your points are going to be taken, but not all of them. But generally speaking, you continue playing until the last round, the 30th round, and whoever has the most points is the winner. There is final scoring after you reach that 30th round, but you get the idea, I think. So that is it. Let's get to our final thoughts.
Now, one thing we can say about the game is that the component quality is very high. Minion Games has not always, it's kind of weird. They're not like a company known for component quality, except for the Manhattan projects.
Right.
Those are really good.
Yeah.
And this one, again, I like that person iconography.
The shape, the icon of
I like
the
that
outline of a person.
because it works, but it doesn't necessarily. It kind of depersonifies it, especially in the game about nukes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for the
It's
politicians seem familiar.
Well, it's a very clean
yeah.
look. It's a very iconic, clean look to the little shape of a person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I like that look as well, yeah. And you're right, it does take away things like facial features and things like that. You can look at it as a, you know, if you're sitting around a table being a general and moving around little buildings and such, it kind of gives me that vibe that you see in movie scenes. I get that from the look of this.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the things I've always liked about the Manhattan Project series is that those little worker tokens, they're always been really nice and chunky, and
Oh yeah.
they're very good quality. And of course, you know, like you guys are saying, the iconography is very good and, you know, in its own way thematic.
Sure.
Yeah, and this game still has that theming of the bombs haven't fallen yet. Like, you're not actually nuking people in this game, you're just kind of threatening. Kind of a real-life brinkmanship type thing going on. That being said, when I played the original game, if you played Manhattan Project, you're building these nukes and there's worker placement and stuff, and the game doesn't have a ton of interaction, except there's this airplane sequence on it where you can build airplanes and kind of mess with your opponents. And honestly, if they had cut that part from Manhattan Project, I wouldn't have minded. It's my least favorite part of the game by far.
Same here.
And I played many games with people where nobody ever even used it, unless you were playing with one of the nations that kind of required you to use it.
Sure. Yeah, it was certainly everything you were doing on your own board, your character deployment, managing your little empire, whether, you know, the theme be nuclear weapon building or not. That's fun, and that worked well in that game. And then you had this couple of tracks up here that you just sort of had to put up with. I felt like I had to put up with. I just never got into that aspect of
Yeah, but
the game.
most people I played with haven't.
Sure.
I do like the fact that it did provide another layer of interaction. I mean, without that, the only interaction that you have is where you're placing your workers and whether or not you're going to take a spot that somebody else needs. And that is literally the only interaction that you have.
I'm kind of okay with that, though, in a worker placement
I understand,
game.
and a lot of people probably are. But the idea that it provided another viable way to interact with other people, that's what I liked about it. And again, like you said, both of you, there weren't a lot of people that have been using it. I think I used it maybe once or twice in the games that I've played, and it really doesn't carry that much of an effect, but it's just another thing that you can do on your turn or over the course of your turns to provide more interaction with other people. And
it just seems like the kind of thing that doesn't feel, you say you use it sometimes, it kind of feels like the thing that is not integral. Like you have to build bombs. That's integral in the game. You have to get more workers. You don't have to advance your military or your spy planes or whatever they are. There were two types of planes, a track.
Fighters and bombers.
Yeah, there you go. And you're just moving them around this and that. Mine's higher than yours, but then yours is higher defense than mine. So, the fact that they then, which I think is what you're getting at, took that
People are going to start wondering if this is a review of Manhattan.
and they made basically a whole game about just those 2 tracks. Let's cut out the rest of this and sort of zoom in on those 2 tracks, turn those into like 6 tracks. Track is what we've got here in Minutes to Midnight, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, the base concept of this game, which is the put workers on or pull them off, I've always liked that. I thought that was a neat thing that Manhattan Project did, and this game does it too, or upgrade your guys in a different kind of workers. That's a really cool concept. But this game has forced interaction, like you have to do it or you will lose the game.
Yeah.
And because it's forced interaction, there's a couple problems. First of all, king making is very possible in this game, and sometimes by accident. Essentially, so let's say Sam and Z are both putting submarines in my waters, and I'm like, I'm going to get rid of some of those submarines, and I get rid of 2 of Z's. That's a swing of a lot of points that I just gave Sam.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, and it's random.
Yes.
And so,
Because you get rid of those submarines randomly. It's not like you can choose.
right. And because of that's a small bit of randomness in the game, but it can be a swing.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the whole, I have airplanes, who am I going to attack?
My sub-captains were just better at hiding.
True. Our subs don't dive. That's what it is.
Exactly. You
Dive,
just float on
dive,
the top of the water.
float.
It's just row. We row our
They're
subs.
row submarines.
Row your sub.
It's row Marines. But so this whole interaction and putting planes in other people's spots, and then these extremely, in my opinion, well, as the whole review is, these extremely boring third world tracks. Really boring. Especially if you play with less than 5 players, because you're once one person's ahead, it's kind of like, all right, I'm either going to put all my effort into catching up, or there's no second place. It's
Yes.
So this interaction is there. It's this back and forth, and for me, it really detracted from the game. Not to mention, I just didn't feel like there was a lot of fun options. The test site thing was interesting. Oh, I can make a test site, blow that up. But the buildings and the game, I also thought the game didn't flow well, where you get a building at the beginning of your turn, and the buildings had different costs for random different costs, which could really mess over someone's special ability. Like, hey, you could buy buildings for cheap, but guess what? All that type is cheap this game, so too bad for you.
Right, sure.
So,
Yeah, overall, I just found it to be less engaging and less fun than the original. I would never choose to play this one over the first one. That one I find gives me a lot more interesting options, and when you get up to that point where you're doing a lot of little things on your own board in the first one, that's just fun, being able to get everything going on, put a bunch of workers out there. In this one, there's just a lot of tracking of things, like I said, lots of tracks, and it's just not as fun, racing someone up on a track here and then racing you up on yours over there. It didn't engage me nearly as much as the first one. So yeah, it wasn't really up my alley.
I'm sensing differing opinions.
Now that these 2 sourpusses are done spouting off their negativity, I actually really did enjoy the game, and I think I enjoyed it more because I enjoyed the interaction that those different military tracks gave you in the original game, and the fact that, like you said, it kind of zoomed in on that and made interaction a must instead of just a choice, I like that. And I think if you liked Manhattan Project, but you didn't like the fact that there was very little player interaction, I think this is probably going to talk to you a lot more than the original did. Because that's what it does. It takes that player interaction and brings it to the forefront. It still has all of the moving cogs and mechanisms of worker placement and trying to efficiently place your guys out and know when to bring them back at the best possible time. It has all of that, but then it also has all of that other stuff that you guys have been talking about in a negative format that I think is a really cool thing. So I don't have anything else to add. It's just that I really enjoyed all that stuff that you guys didn't.
Do you like this one more than the first one?
I probably like them. I probably do, because it has everything that the original game had as far as the worker placement mechanisms and building your own little machine, so to speak. But then it also has everything else that's on top of that I also enjoyed. So I don't know that I liked it zounds more than the first one, but I did enjoy it more than the original Manhattan Project because of the added interaction between players. The first one felt a little bit like a solitaire game.
No, I'll agree with you there.
This one felt like we were all playing against each other, and I liked it a little bit more.
Two other things I didn't like. No, one is I didn't like the scoring. The scoring, when it happened, I guess. It's like, oh, I want to do planes. Well, they don't score till the end of the game. All right, fine. Should I build them now anyway? But I need to build subs right now because that's what's going on.
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that thing, and that compounds into my second problem, and I think this one's more of a, not an opinion, but it's an actual problem with the game. It doesn't scale well. It literally, because players are determining when the game ends and when scoring happens, and so the more players you have, the faster the scoring comes, you get less options. Now, the game book tells you, optionally in the back, for a long game or an epic game or a way too long game, whatever it's called, you can make the game longer. And then they say, we recommend you do this for 4 players. They should have just put that in the rules. For 4 and for 5 players, those scoring things have to be farther apart, because you could literally have very few actions between 2 scorings otherwise in a 5-player game.
Yeah.
And so the game works better with 3 for the scoring track, but then at the same time there's not as much interaction because, again, the one person who might not be interacting with the other players might win.
Right. So you get the interaction at the sake of something else you're giving up.
I guess I don't mind the way the scoring is. I mean, I understand wanting to spread them out in the larger player numbers.
Of course, it also makes it really long. I mean, really long.
But I like the fact that it's there because it tells you what you need to go for. And if you see that somebody's able to jump on that submarine train first, and you don't think you're going to just let that go by the wayside and start working on something else, it gives you kind of a goal to work towards.
Yeah, but I mean, why couldn't we just have all the goals, and we all just work towards the goal of our choice, type thing?
And then have them all equally scored?
I don't know. I just feel like
that seems bland.
I feel like there's here's a bunch of options, but really do this one.
Do this one first or else.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's an or else. You can do this first, or
but if you start
really laying up on that next one and lock that one down. And now that you've got that one locked down, start working on the fourth one, or maybe the third and the fourth one at the same time once you have that first one locked down. I don't know. I like the options that it gave you.
Well, to be clear, I didn't hate the game. I didn't like it very much, actually, to the point where I was like, all right, I must have missed something completely. I'll try it again with a really good attitude. That didn't change anything. So the interaction for me, the components are great. The interaction for me, and I already listed all my problems with the game. It just kind of is like, why would I play this when I could play Manhattan? So I'm gonna give this one silo down.
That is an ineffective.
I'll go next, so you can finish on
an ineffective silo.
On a strong note. I think I echo pretty much what Tom said. I just don't see a reason for this one for myself. So again, if you like what Sam's talking about, more interaction. If you liked the overview, then maybe this is the one that you'll like better than the original. I found that one to be a maybe a more finalized product, one that felt fresher and more interesting. But, you know, that's just my opinion, of course. So I'm going to give it 1 nuclear missile, but on the way back down.
That's worse. That's worse than what I said.
Dark. Yeah, at least his silo didn't work well. Yours is working, and it's about to do a lot of damage. Yeah.
That's like the worst rating he's ever given a game.
That's true. That's true. Well, I'm going to give it 1 nuclear plant up. And the reason I say that is because I think that if you liked Manhattan Project, but you wish it had more interaction, I think this is probably going to be for you. But if you liked Manhattan Project the way it was, you might not like this very much.
I think if you have played the first game, how you feel about those 2 tracks at the top of the player boards is a good indicator.
Yeah.
There you
So that's that for me. I think it's a good game, and I think it's very enjoyable. But again, just depends on what you liked from the original and why you liked the original.
Yep.
Alrighty, well there we go. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia. See ya.
Sam Healy. See you on the flip side, folks.